What do you see as the significance of awards such as these from the perspective of the bank, but also from a corporate perspective?
I think first of all, thank you. We really value the awards and the recognition that we got from Global Finance. I think it was fantastic. From Standard Chartered perspective, being a very client-led organization, we really value the innovation and the new things that we're bringing to the clients and being client-centric in all our development. So awards like this, which are almost an independent recognition, go a long way, not only internally in the bank, telling us that we are on the right track, but for the clients to notice, some of the stuff that we're doing and being highlighted and recognized for.
What do you see as the impact of the slowdown of emerging market growth on global and regional trade?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's been a very thematic topic at SIBOS and at IMF before, and I know this is a topical question. So, indeed, there's US and Europe slowdown, but at the same time, if you look at some of the growing economies like Asia, they are linked but resilient on their own. And especially if you look at the trade corridor that's happening between Asia, Africa, and Middle East, that's absolutely on the growth path. If you look at, we talk about India, China. We talk about China, Africa. India, Africa is growing at the same rate as China, Africa is. China, Africa is a $110 billion trade now, and India, Africa is $50 billion trade. So we are in the emerging markets where the growth rates of trade and the GDP growth of the countries which are fueling this trade growth are still buoyant, and we are very hopeful that they will remain buoyant as US and Europe recover.
And what do you see as the impact on the global economy?
I think from a global economy perspective, if you look at it, I still feel that there is going to be a bit of an area where we'll have to look at growth coming out of US and Europe, and that's going to take some time. China, we know that it's looking at a soft landing at this moment, which is more consolidation to a large extent. But as the leadership change happens, as China economy changes more towards demand-led than infrastructure-led, its linkages to Asia and Africa are still very strong. And we think from a global economy perspective, it does look very positive.
What's the change in global and regional trade patterns Signify for the transaction services and transaction processing industry?
So I think from a trade pattern perspective, one, their trade is happening in absolutely new markets. So you've got a big area of risk management that's starting to come in because Africa is coming to the forefront of the trade corridors. At the same time, cost is playing a very big role. But while we do looking at that cost, I think the interesting thing that's happening is trade, which used to be a very documentary, standard tool of financing and risk management, is actually innovating very quickly. And the latest BPO with SWIFT, I think, is one new move in reinventing trade and how it should be done, which actually brings down the cost of doing trade, but at the same time does not compromise with the risk as well as the financing mechanism that it was being used for. So I think trade is an interesting journey. Trade is trade, it will keep growing, but the innovations that are now being brought in, and it's more revolutionary now than evolutionary, I would say.
What do you see, or what is your perspective on the evolution of trade as an independent asset class?
To a large extent, I think it will, at some point of time, come out as an independent asset class to a large extent. Because if you look at it, trade are short tenure asset classes, right, to a large extent. Most of the products are short tenure. They match the liquidity profile that's being generated. And what you will get to a stage from a regulatory and a risk management framework point of view, that as soon as you start matching the tenures of your balance sheet to become more effective, you will have to start seeing trade in a very different light.